Today, we uncover the shocking truth about UK pasta sauce. You'd think a jar of tomato sauce would be simple, right? Tomatoes, maybe some garlic, a bit of olive oil, basil. That's what Italian grandmothers have been making for centuries. But here's what's actually going into the jars lining British supermarket shelves. Modified maize starch that's been treated with sulfuric acid during processing. Sugar levels that rival breakfast cereals. Salt content so high that one serving gives you nearly your entire daily limit. Rapeseed oil, the same stuff that was used as industrial machine lubricant, replacing traditional olive oil. And here's the truly shocking part. The parent company of Britain's most popular pasta sauce brand actually warned consumers to only eat their product once a week because of the high levels of fat, salt, and sugar. Think about that. The manufacturer themselves admitted their sauce is barely fit for weekly consumption, yet it's still marketed to families with cute puppet mascots and claims of authentic Italian flavor. We're not talking about obscure brands here. These are the household names sitting in millions of British kitchens right now. The deception runs deep. Premium celebrity chef sauces charging 3 times the price of supermarket brands whilst using the exact same industrial ingredients. Budget ranges specifically marketed to struggling families that contain the absolute worst formulations, with water quietly listed before tomatoes, organic certified brands trading on health halos while still packing in added sugars. So we've gone through the major brands currently sold in UK supermarkets, and we'll expose the 9 pasta sauce products you need to avoid. Then I'll tell you the handful which are actually still worth buying, including the best budget option if money's tight. But before we get into that, I need your help spreading this message. If this information shocks you, and I guarantee it will, hit that hype button right now. Here's why this matters. Every time you hype this video, it pushes it to more people. More people means more awareness. More awareness means more pressure on these companies to clean up their act. We've seen it happen before. When enough consumers push back, when enough people refuse to accept being sold industrial waste disguised as food, these corporations are forced to change. But it only works if this reaches beyond just us. The algorithm needs to see that people care about this. So hit hype right now before we go any further. Because this isn't just about pasta sauce. This is about taking back control of what goes into our bodies and demanding better from an industry that's been taking us for fools for far too long. Let's make them listen. And let's get into it. Number 9. Sainsbury's pasta sauces, and we're lumping their puttanesca and stir-in tomato and basil together because they're 2 sides of the same rotten coin. Whether you're buying their regular sauce or their premium stir-in range, Sainsbury's is serving you the exact same industrial formula dressed up in different packaging. Let's start with the puttanesca. 2 grams of salt per 100 grams. Think about what that means. 1 jar of this sauce in your spaghetti, and you've consumed nearly your entire daily salt limit in a single meal. Your blood pressure spikes just reading the label. But Sainsbury's doesn't stop there. They've bolted out with modified maize starch, the cheap thickener that's been treated with sulfuric acid or chlorine during processing. Not exactly what an Italian nonna would have used, is it? And instead of proper olive oil, you're getting rapeseed oil. That's the industrial oil that was literally used to lubricate machinery before someone decided it'd be cheaper to put it in food. Now, the stir-in tomato and basil version. This one's marketed as premium, with that artisan stir-in label making you think you're getting something closer to homemade. The reality? Only 40% tomato, the rest is water and additives. Modified maize starch again. Rapeseed oil again. They've essentially watered down tomato paste, thickened it with chemicals, and charged you more for the privilege because it says stir-in on the label. The pattern here is clear. Whether you're spending £1.50 or £3 on Sainsbury's pasta sauce, you're getting the same industrial recipe. Modified starch to make watery tomato feel thick. Cheap rapeseed oil instead of olive oil, either a salt bomb or a water scam depending on which variant you pick. And the Food Standards Agency just lets this happen. They allow companies to market chemical slurry as authentic Italian sauce, to charge premium prices for watered-down rubbish, to specifically target budget shoppers with the worst possible formulations. Sainsbury's isn't unique in this. but they're a perfect example of how every major supermarket is playing the same game. Different labels, different price points, same industrial garbage. Number 8. Ragu traditional pasta sauce. If you thought Sainsbury's was bad with their salt content, wait until you see what Ragu's hiding. 8 grams of sugar per 100 grams. Let me put that in perspective for you. That's higher than many breakfast cereals. It's more sugar than you'd find in some chocolate bars. One serving of ragu and you've consumed 10 grams of sugar, which is 34% of your entire daily allowance, from a pasta sauce. Not from dessert, not from a fizzy drink, from what's supposed to be a savory tomato sauce. Multiple reviewers describe ragu as tasting like tomato-flavored candy syrup, and now you know why. They've essentially made liquid sweets and called it traditional pasta sauce. But the sugar's not even the worst part. The texture is watery and thin, more like tomato water than proper sauce. It doesn't coat your pasta, it just runs off and pools at the bottom of the bowl. People say it's like pouring tinned tomato soup over spaghetti. And here's the real betrayal. That word traditional on the label. Traditional to whom? Certainly not to any Italian grandmother who's ever made sauce from scratch. Traditional Italian tomato sauce doesn't need 8 grams of added sugar. The tomatoes themselves provide natural sweetness when you cook them properly. But ragu's using cheap tomatoes, probably picked, underripe and processed quickly, which means they lack flavor. So they dump in sugar to compensate. The result is something that tastes vaguely tomato-ish and overwhelmingly sweet, with a thin, watery consistency that insults the very concept of pasta sauce. Yet millions of British families have been buying it week after week, thinking they're getting authentic Italian flavor, when they're really just getting industrial tomato syrup. Number 7. Tesco tomato and basil 700-gram jar. Here's where the Made in Italy phrase gets truly insulting. Right there on the label, you'll see those magic words. Made in Italy. It conjures up images of sun-ripened San Marzano tomatoes, small batches simmered slowly in terracotta, recipes passed down through generations. The reality is 6.9 grams of sugar per 100 grams, modified maize starch that's been chemically treated, and corn flour as a bulking agent. Let's talk about that modified maize starch for a moment, because this is something the industry desperately doesn't want you understanding. During the modification process, these starches are often treated with sulfuric acid or chlorine. Yes, the same sulfuric acid that's used in car batteries, the same chlorine that's used to bleach things white. These are the chemicals being used to alter the structure of cornstarch so it works better as a thickener in processed foods. The Food Standards Agency allows this in conventional products whilst banning it in organic ranges, which tells you everything you need to know about whether they think it's actually safe. Tesco takes this chemically modified starch, adds regular corn flour for extra bulk, dumps in sugar, and then has the nerve to print Made in Italy on the jar. Yes, it might be physically manufactured in an Italian factory, but do you think any Italian nonna would recognize this as sauce? The chemical acidity regulator instead of real lemon juice. The industrial thickeners instead of slow simmering to reduce the sauce naturally. The added sugar instead of letting the tomatoes speak for themselves. This isn't Italian cooking, it's industrial food production that happens to take place on Italian soil. And Tesco knows exactly what they're doing with that label. They know British consumers associate Italy with quality food, with authentic ingredients, with traditional methods. So they slap Made in Italy on a jar of chemical sludge and charge you £1.50 for the privilege. It's cynical, it's deceptive, and it works because most people don't read past those 3 words on the label. But now you know what you're really buying. Number 6. Dolmio Original Bolognese. This one's personal for me because of the sheer audacity involved. In 2016, Mars Foods, the parent company of Dolmio, actually came out and warned consumers that some of their pasta sauces should only be eaten occasionally because they're higher in fat, salt and sugar. Let that sink in. The manufacturer themselves admitted their product is barely fit for regular consumption. They essentially told families, yeah, our sauce that we market to you with cute puppet characters and imagery of sunny Italian countryside, you probably shouldn't eat that more than once a week. The health implications are that bad. But did they reformulate the product? Did they reduce the sugar and salt to safe levels? No. They just put out a press release covering themselves legally and kept selling the exact same formulation. Here's what's actually in a jar of Dolmio Original Bolognese. 6.5 grams of sugar per 100 grams. One serving gives a child 42% of their daily sugar allowance, just from the source, before you've even added the pasta or any protein. Modified maize starch, same chemical treatment we discussed before, added sugar on top of the natural sugars from tomatoes. And despite all that sugar, reviewers consistently describe Dolmio as watery and unpleasantly salty. The puppets on the marketing are doing overtime to distract from what's actually in the jar. Speaking of marketing, Dolmio's been pushing this Italian family authenticity angle for decades. The brand was originally launched as Allura in 1985, then renamed Dolmio and rolled out across the UK in 1986. Back then, it might have been a relatively straightforward product, but like everything else in the food industry, it's been cost-engineered over the years. Cheaper ingredients, more fillers, more sugar to compensate for worse tomatoes, more salt to compensate for lack of depth. Now it's an ultra-processed product that the company itself admits you shouldn't eat regularly, yet it's still one of the best-selling pasta sauces in Britain. Number 5. Asda Just Essentials Pasta Sauce. If you want to see the poverty penalty in action, look no further than Asda's budget range. This is what they think struggling families deserve. Water listed before tomatoes in the ingredients. That's not a typo. The primary ingredient in this pasta sauce isn't tomato. It's water. Only 24% actual tomatoes in the jar, 36% tomato puree from concentrate, which means it's been heavily diluted and reconstituted. And to make this watery mess feel like actual sauce, they've bulked it with modified maize starch. Same chemical treatment, same cheap filler. This is industrial waste dressed up as food, and it's specifically marketed to people on tight budgets who can't afford better options. Think about the cruelty of that for a moment. Asda knows that families struggling with the cost of living crisis will reach for the Just Essentials range because it's the cheapest option on the shelf. So what do they give them? The absolute worst formulation possible, the most water, the least actual tomato, the most chemical fillers. They're taking advantage of people's financial desperation to sell them nutritionally bankrupt rubbish. And they're not even cheap about it. You're paying £1.50 for a jar that's mostly water and starch. You could buy a tin of quality chopped tomatoes for 80p and make something infinitely better with 5 minutes of effort. But Asda's betting that people in a rush, people exhausted from working multiple jobs, people who've been told jarred sauce is convenient and normal won't do that calculation. They're betting on your desperation and your lack of time. This is how supermarkets treat their most vulnerable customers. Not with respect, not with affordable quality, but with the cheapest possible slop they can legally sell. The industry lobbies hard against any regulation that might cut into profit margins. Instead of focusing on reducing the monstrous amounts of food they waste daily and passing on the savings to the consumer, they come up with new ways to make nutritionally void Frankenstein food for the people struggling paycheck to paycheck. So Asda keeps selling watered-down chemical paste to families who can't afford better, and the cycle continues. If that doesn't make you angry, I don't know what will. Number 4. Sackler tomato and mascarpone stir-in. Now we're moving from budget disasters to premium disasters, and Sackler's cheese sauce is the champion of both saturated fat and salt content. 8.5 grams of saturated fat per 100 grams. That's the highest of any pasta sauce tested. 2.7 grams of salt per 100 grams, also the highest. Nutritionists have specifically warned against eating this regularly because the levels are so extreme. This isn't a pasta sauce, it's a cream cheese dip that's been thinned out slightly and marketed as premium Italian cooking. Sackler's entire Intenso stir-through range trades on this idea of indulgence, of treating yourself to restaurant-quality sauce at home. The jars are designed to look upmarket. The word mascarpone conjures images of rich, authentic Italian ingredients. And yes, there is mascarpone in here, along with heavy cream and cheese, which is why the fat content is through the roof. But here's what they don't advertise. One serving of this sauce, and you've consumed more saturated fat than you'd get from many fast food meals. The salt content is so high it'll spike your blood pressure, and you're paying premium prices for what essentially amounts to a heart attack in a jar. The tomato is almost an afterthought. This is just cream, cheese, and salt, with barely enough tomato to justify calling it a pasta sauce. The really insidious part is how this is marketed. Sackler positions these sauces as sophisticated, as premium, as something you'd use for a special meal. They're banking on people not reading the nutrition label, because surely something this expensive, this marketed towards foodies, can't be that bad for you. But it is. It's worse than most of the budget sauces we've discussed, at least in terms of fat and salt. And you're paying £3 or £4 for the privilege. This is the flip side of the poverty penalty. If you're wealthy enough to shop in the premium section, they'll still sell you garbage, just expensive garbage marketed with prettier words. The lesson here is that price and packaging mean nothing. A fancy jar with Italian words and premium positioning can still contain some of the unhealthiest formulations on the shelf. In fact, sometimes the expensive ones are worse, because they know they can hide extreme fat and salt content behind the word indulgent. Number 2. Lloyd Grossman tomato and chili, or tomato and basil. Celebrity chef pasta sauces deserve their own circle of consumer hell, and Lloyd Grossman's range is a perfect example of why. These sauces trade entirely on his name recognition and his reputation from various cooking shows over the years. The jars are designed to look sophisticated, with his signature printed prominently, promising traditional southern Italian recipes made with care and quality ingredients. The reality is watery, greasy, unpleasantly salty industrial sauce that costs 2 to 3 times the price of supermarket-owned brands. Taste testers have literally called Lloyd Grossman the worst of the bunch. Not just bad, but actively worse than budget options that cost a third of the price. Let's look at the numbers. The tomato and chili version contains 1.5 grams of salt per 100 grams. That's 5 times more than Asda Good For You Bolognese. 5 times. And here's the kicker. Even the no added sugar tomato and basil jar still packs 5.8 grams of sugar per 100 grams from the tomatoes and carrots. So you're not actually avoiding sugar, you're just avoiding explicitly added sugar, which is a meaningless distinction when the final number is still that high. Reviews consistently mention excess oil pooling on top of the sauce when you open the jar. It's described as off-putting, greasy, unpleasant. That oil separation is a sign of poor emulsification, which suggests the sauce hasn't been processed properly or has been sitting on the shelf too long. Either way, it's not what you expect when you're paying premium prices. Lloyd Grossman made his name on Through the Keyhole back in the 90s, then transitioned into cooking shows and food consultancy. His pasta sauce range launched on the back of that reputation, positioning itself as restaurant quality for home cooks. But here's the thing about celebrity-branded foods. The celebrity almost never has anything to do with the actual production. They license their name, maybe sign off on a recipe during development, and then a food manufacturing company handles everything else. Lloyd Grossman isn't in an Italian kitchen hand-selecting tomatoes and simmering sauce. He's not quality controlling each batch. His name's on the jar, his face is on the marketing, but the sauce itself is made in the same industrial facilities using the same cost-cutting measures as everything else. You're paying extra for his signature, not for better ingredients or superior methods. That's the celebrity chef scam in a nutshell. And people fall for it because we want to believe that someone with culinary credentials wouldn't put their name on rubbish. But they would, and they do, all the time, because the licensing fees are too good to pass up. Number 1. Bertolli tomato and basil. We'll close out the avoid list with what I call the healthy oil deception. Bertolli built their entire brand reputation on olive oil. That's what they're known for. Mediterranean authenticity, quality ingredients, the health benefits of olive oil-based cooking. So when you see Bertolli pasta sauce on the shelf, you're primed to think it's healthier than other options. It's got to be. Right, it's Bertolli, the olive oil people. They wouldn't put out a substandard product. Except they absolutely did. 5.2 grams of sugar per 100 grams. That's added sugar on top of concentrated tomatoes. which already have natural sugars. You're buying this sauce thinking you're making a healthier choice, thinking you're getting just tomatoes and quality olive oil, and you're actually getting a sugar bomb dressed up in Mediterranean branding. This is brand exploitation at its finest. Bertolli knows their name carries weight. They know people associate them with quality, with authenticity, with health. So they extend that brand into pasta sauces, and consumers buy it assuming the same standards apply. But the pasta sauce is made by a completely different division, probably in a completely different facility, using the same industrial processes and cheap ingredients as everyone else. The olive oil reputation doesn't transfer to the sauce quality, but the marketing team is banking on you not realizing that until after you've bought it, and most people won't realize it at all. They'll taste the sauce, think it's fine, maybe a bit sweet but not terrible, and continue buying it because the Bertolli name gives them confidence. That's the power of brand halo effect. One good product line makes you trust everything else with that logo, even when the everything else is completely different in quality and formulation. The concentrated tomatoes are another red flag. Tomato concentrate sounds like it should be good, right? More tomato flavor per volume. But concentrate means the tomatoes have been cooked down, reduced, processed multiple times. Each round of processing destroys more of the fresh flavor, more of the nutrients, more of what makes a tomato actually taste like a tomato. So they're starting with degraded tomato concentrate, adding sugar to compensate for the lack of natural sweetness, and selling it to you at a premium because it says Bertolli on the jar. You could buy a tin of whole Italian tomatoes for less money and have better flavor, better nutrition, and actual authenticity. But Bertolli's counting on their brand name convincing you otherwise. So that's the 9 to avoid. 9 different ways the pasta sauce industry is taking advantage of British consumers. From water masquerading as sauce in budget ranges, to celebrity names slapped on industrial slop, to premium prices hiding nutritional disasters, modified starches treated with battery acid and bleach, rapeseed oil that used to lubricate machinery, sugar levels that rival sweets, salt content that'll spike your blood pressure. The food lobby is powerful and profits trump public health every single time. Now let's talk about the few sauces that are actually decent. Because despite everything I've just told you, there are some options worth buying if you're going to buy jarred sauce at all. First, Mutti pasta sauces, specifically their tomato and parmesan variety. This is the gold standard for jarred sauce in UK supermarkets. 100% sun-ripened Italian tomatoes, 60% whole tomato pulp, plus 20% tomato puree, 4% real Parmesan cheese. No hidden sugars, no gums, no modified starches, no chemical thickeners. The only slight cheat is a small amount of carrot to naturally mellow the acidity, which is actually a traditional technique, not an industrial shortcut. The sugar content is 4 to 5 grams per 100 grams, all naturally occurring from the tomatoes themselves, not added. Salt is low at 0.2 to 0.3 grams per 100 grams. UK food magazines consistently rate Mutti as the go-to brand for quality tomatoes, and that reputation is deserved. The sauce tastes fresh, bright, actually like tomatoes instead of like sugar or salt or oil. If you can afford it, Mutti is worth the money. If you can't, keep reading because there are cheaper, decent options. Second, Biona Organic Pasta Sauce, the Basilico variety. This is the cleanest label you'll find on British shelves. 80% tomatoes, split between 40% pulp and 40% puree. Organic vegetables including celery, carrot and onion. Olive oil and basil. That's it. No added sugar whatsoever. The nutrition label shows 3.1 grams of sugar per 100 grams, all naturally occurring. Salt is 1.1 grams per 100 grams, which is moderately high but still better than most jarred sauces. No preservatives, no starches, no chemical additives, no industrial oils. Because it's organic, the tomatoes are grown without pesticides and the whole production process is cleaner. The taste is bright and fresh, not watery, with actual vegetable flavor coming through from the soffritto. If you want organic certification and a truly clean label, this is your best bet. Third, Geffen mushroom and tomato sauce. Though fair warning, availability can be spotty. The mushroom and tomato variety combines Italian tomatoes with sautéed mushrooms, and the umami from the mushrooms adds natural depth without needing loads of salt or sugar. 80 kilocalories per 100 grams makes it one of the lowest calorie options. Saturated fat is low, salt is low at 0.5 grams per 100 grams, no added sugar. The ingredients are straightforward: tomatoes, mushrooms, garlic, oil. That's proper cooking, not industrial processing. Nutritionists have specifically called this out as a good option for anyone watching their weight or trying to eat cleaner. If you see it on shelves, grab it because it's genuinely decent. Fourth, Aldi Cucina Tomato and Herb. This is the budget champion. Aldi's Cucina range is often under £2 per jar, sometimes as low as £1.79, and it's surprisingly good for the price. Lower sugar and salt than major branded options. Simple, straightforward ingredients without excessive processing. Blind taste tests have rated it as highly as some premium brands. This is what you buy if money's tight and you still want something better than the modified starch water that Asda's pushing. It's not organic, it's not fancy, but it's honest. Real tomatoes, reasonable seasoning, no major red flags on the label. Aldi's proved that budget doesn't have to mean garbage, and the big supermarkets could absolutely do the same if they chose to. They just don't, because there's more profit in selling chemical slurry. But here's the real talk. The best option isn't any jarred sauce, no matter how clean the label is. The best option is making your own, and it's cheaper and easier than you think. One tin of quality chopped tomatoes costs about 80 pence. One onion costs about 20 pence. 3 or 4 garlic cloves cost about 30 pence. Fresh or dried basil costs about £1 if you're buying it new, less if you've already got some in the cupboard. Olive oil you probably already have. Salt and pepper you definitely have. Total cost is around £2.30 for enough sauce to serve 4 people. Compare that to £1.50 for a jar of Asda's watered-down rubbish. You're getting real food, fresh flavour, no chemicals, no modified starches, no industrial oils, and you're spending less or the same as jarred options. The method is dead simple. Dice the onion, mince the garlic, sweat them in olive oil until soft. Add the tin of tomatoes, season with salt, pepper, and basil. Simmer for 20 to 30 minutes. That's it. If you want it smoother, blend it. If you want it chunkier, leave it as is. You can make a big batch on Sunday, freeze it in portions, and you've got homemade sauce ready to go for weeks. It takes barely more effort than opening a jar, and the difference in taste and quality is massive. No company is looking out for your health. No supermarket is prioritizing your well-being over their profit margins. I know times are tough. I know the cost of living crisis is hitting hard. I know not everyone has the time or energy to cook from scratch after working all day. But even if you only make your own sauce once a month, that's still one less jar of industrial waste going into your body. That's still one less purchase supporting companies that think you deserve modified starch and rapeseed oil instead of real ingredients. Small changes add up. Awareness spreads. Enough people demanding better, and eventually the industry has to respond. That's why videos like this matter, and that's why I need you to hit that hype button one more time before you go. Share this with someone who needs to see it. Leave a comment telling me which food product you want me to investigate next, because I'm going to keep making these videos, keep exposing what's really in our food, keep pushing back against an industry that profits from our ignorance. Subscribe if you haven't already, because there's a lot more coming. Until next time, read those labels, question everything, and protect your plate.